okay? Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Township of Edison Zoning Board of Adjustment, regular meeting is now in session. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act of 1975, has been provided by the annual notice published in the Home News and Tribune on January 20, 2022, and has been posted in the main lobby of the municipal complex on January 5, 2022. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Cassandra.
Mr. Aya? Ms. Shaw?
Present.
Mr. Bletcher?
Present.
Mr. Patel?
Here.
Mr. Skibar?
Here.
Mr. O'Gorman?
Here.
Mr. Barone?
Here.
Mr. Dave is not here yet. Vice Chair Kumba?
Here.
And Chairwoman Federick.
Here. Thank you, Cassandra. Good evening, everyone. Just a few things on the agenda to be noted. The first case, Mr. Parrick, that case is being carried to October 18th. There will be no renotice required except for the two properties that were not originally noticed, and that's why they're not on this evening's agenda. The second case is Z2022 Chevet Developers has been carried to October 18th with no renotice required, so it will be on October the 18th. And the fourth case, Z15-2022, American Outdoor, is carried to September 20 with no renotice required. Having said that, I'll go to my summary that I've been doing for over a year now, so that the public will be more informed as they watch the meetings or are here in person. Because there have been so many misconceptions as to this board and how it operates, including what it may consider and may not consider in its procedures and hearings, I've been doing this summary every meeting. We are all volunteers and we do not get paid. We are appointed by council. We all have to attend a state training course, and we have our own in-house session when it is deemed necessary and appropriate. Naturally, during COVID, we were not able to do any in-house training. This year, we have had one. As I have said at prior meetings, the municipal land use law is the legal Bible by which this board operates, along with its own bylaws. This board differs greatly from the planning board. This board is quasi-judicial. That is, it is like a court, and its members are like judges. And its impartiality rules and necessity to address matters are in accordance with laws that are the same statewide, not just Edison. Being impartial means board members are not to discuss the matter with the public until the matter is being heard at a meeting. The board has always and continues to proceed in the following manner. All matters concerning an application are not addressed by this board until the applicant's case is presented at a meeting. The board engages in no discussions and receives the applicant's submissions only days prior to the applicant's scheduled date. When the applicant has presented its testimony and evidence, the public portion is open to residents within 200 feet of the subject property, then those outside of 200 feet of the property. Each person is given only one chance to speak. All public are sworn in and subject to cross-examination by the applicant, the board, and board professionals. The public may ask questions to the applicant and their experts and board professionals. The law allows me as chair to stop anyone from being repetitive in their objections or to attempt to filibuster the board. Such redundancy in conduct prevents the efficient operation by the board. By law, as chair, I am also permitted to stop anyone from speaking if what they are saying is irrelevant to the case and prohibited from the board's consideration. I am also permitted to restrict all public comment to a time frame considered reasonable, which I have limited to 5 minutes in the past and reserve that right. Giving objectors 5 minutes each to speak has been upheld as reasonable in a decision of the New Jersey Superior Court Appellate Division. I am not required to tolerate disruption or disrespect to the board. Once the public portion is closed, that is when I hit the gavel. It is closed and no one from the public will speak again. It will not be reopened under any circumstances unless new testimony is provided in the matter. The applicant has the right of summation and the board then votes. This has been the procedure of this board for more than 20-plus years, and this procedure or similar procedures are followed by every zoning board in the state of New Jersey. The board has an obligation to engage in a balancing act and is not required to strictly apply the township ordinance's zone plan or the master plan, which is permitted by the municipal land use law. This is statewide conduct, again, by all boards of adjustment. As the name of the board suggests, we are a board of adjustment, adjustment being the operative word. Variances are granted when appropriately necessary, following all legal considerations. Having said all of the above, the board has and does reserve the right to cease all proceedings as we near 10:30 p.m. So having said all that, can you call the one and only case on the agenda, please, Cassandra?
Yes. Case number Z23-2022, JCC 1775 Oak Tree Road, Edison, New Jersey 08820, Section 3711.2, 3763.1, and 3760.3, bulk and use variances along with preliminary and final site plan approval sought to construct an addition to the existing Jewish Community Center for use by the JCC and for religious services of Temple Emmanuel. Religious services are not a permitted use. Max lot coverage by buildings and pavement permitted is 30% and proposed is 31.7%. 274 parking spaces are required, where 213 are being proposed. Affected property is located in the RA zone, designated as block number 643.26, lot number 15 on the Edison Township tax map. All paperwork is in order.
Thank you, Cassandra. Good evening, Mr. Shire.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Bernard Shire with the firm of Convery and Shire. I'm representing the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County. Very briefly, we are the property as described by the secretary to the board. Presently, it is used as a Jewish Community Center, has been in existence for 40 years. We do have a prior approval of this board for an expansion, which was granted in 2020. However, subsequent to the granting of that expansion, we have been contacted by the Temple Emmanuel of Edison Township, which needs to move from their present facility to a new facility and desire to remain in the Township of Edison, which it has served for quite a few years. The proposal is simply to expand the JCC and also provide a facility on the property for the Temple Emmanuel to hold their religious services and other uses related thereto. The only variances necessary are use and parking, and we have with us our engineer who prepared the plans, our architect, a traffic engineer if necessary, and our planner to testify as to the propriety of the variances. Unless there's some preliminary questions, I'm ready to proceed.
Any questions for Mr. Shire from the board? Yes, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out that we do have 6 members present today, and it is a use. So I just let you know that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, did they say whether, okay, maybe he's just running late. Okay, Mr. Shire?
Yes, call Adam Glynn.
So you are going to proceed?
I'm sorry?
You are going to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Mr. Glenn, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
I think we're going to need more than one microphone.
Oh, there's only one there?
Would you please state your full name for the record when you have a moment?
Yes, Adam Glynn.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
Seem to
Shire.
be sworn?
Yeah, she just did.
Okay. Mr. Glynn, please state your position with the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County.
I am presently the Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County.
All right, could you just briefly state the purpose and operation of the center and also what we're proposing here?
Sure. Just by way of background, I have been affiliated with the Jewish Community Center of Middlesex County since approximately 1995 as a member, since 1998 as a member of the Board of Directors. I am a past president of the Jewish Community Center, and I currently serve, as I stated before, as the CEO of the JCC since January 1, 2022, having previously served as the Director of Development and Administration. The JCC opened its doors at 1775 Oak Tree Road approximately 38 years ago on May 20, 1984. The JCC presently serves approximately 6,000 members of the Edison and surrounding communities with an array of programs and services. Our membership and program participants reflect the really wonderful vitality and diversity of our communities, coming from a multitude of ethnic, cultural, faith, racial, and other backgrounds. We provide programs and services in areas of health and wellness, preschool and children's services, families, a comprehensive older adult and senior program, special needs programs, socialization, peer interaction, and social services. In December 2002, we introduced a collaborative relationship with the Metuchen, Edison, Woodbridge, South Amboy YMCA, creating what we call and have called since then the Community Campus, which will celebrate 20 years of existence this coming December 15. The JCC also collaborates with a number of local and community organizations, including Hackensack Meridian JFK, the Edison Art Society, the Metuchen Edison Area Interfaith Clergy Association, the Edison Township School District, Replenish of Middlesex County, and many others. As the community has grown, the JCC has expanded and enhanced our programs and services to meet the changing needs and interests of the community, and now also addressing the needs for expanded and more accessible, more secure, and more multifunctional space. We have been faced with significant capacity restrictions resulting in the need to cut off and limit enrollments and participation in programs and services, spaces that are not as conducive to the new programs and our expanded population. Our board of directors and professional staff have responded by developing a plan to expand our facility, with the addition being brought before you this evening to better meet the needs of the community in a manner that improves capacity, safety, accessibility, security, and also enables the JCC to provide space to welcome Temple Emmanuel of Edison, an organization that has been an integral part of the Edison community for now 60 years, to enable them to relocate to the JCC campus, remain part of the fabric of the Edison community, and to continue to provide the important religious, social justice, educational, and outreach programs that have been a part of the Temple's mission and benefited the residents of Edison and the surrounding communities for these past 60 years. As you know, Temple Emmanuel sold their property to Hackensack Meridian Health and needed to relocate after 60 years on James Street. They desired to remain in Edison, and certainly their continued presence and service to Edison is important. Their food pantry, their social action programs and services all make the Edison community a better place. The ability of the JCC to expand with this project to incorporate the Temple not only aligns with the JCC mission, but also enables the JCC and the Temple to continue our collaborative work for the community. Additionally, from a logistical and design standpoint, this expansion plan will enable the Temple to use new and existing JCC classrooms, meeting spaces, and provide shared and common spaces, including lounges, a courtyard, and other gathering areas for greater efficiency and integration of the organizations. The main drivers of the expansion are the following. For our older adults and our seniors, moving their programs off of the second floor of the JCC existing facility into new expanded program spaces, socialization, health and wellness spaces on the first floor, which are safer, more accessible, and more secure, particularly in situations of emergency, the need for evacuation, and the like. Second, for our youngest among us, our young children, our preschoolers, and for those we serve with special needs, creating more early childhood education, enrichment, and special needs spaces. Also, now having lived through the COVID pandemic, the need for program spaces that are larger, allow for better distancing, better and more efficient air quality, and other systems make this project even more important and timely. To be able to additionally provide new space for Temple Emmanuel for their programs and services, including their youth programs, special needs, food insecurity, and other community and social action programs, to enable them to continue their now 60-year presence in Edison, is a wonderful addition to the project and to our community campus. This project seeks to address and respond to what the community is looking for: more accessible, secure, state-of-the-art program spaces, particularly for those most vulnerable, our older adults and seniors, our youngest children, and our special needs community. We truly believe that this project will be transformational for Edison and for the surrounding communities and for all those whom we serve. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Glynn?
I will find out. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Glynn? Yes, Mr. Skibar?
Yeah. How many members, do you know how many members are currently belong to the Temple Emmanuel?
I believe they have approximately 200 units, 200 member units. It's approximately 400, 450 members, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Glynn? Mr. Kamba?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, can we go over your plan for when there are temple services or temple programs, how the JCC programs, how that if there are programs if there's services going on in the temple, if there's still be programs going on at JCC, can we cover that a little bit?
Sure.
We're closed.
Yeah. So the reality is, this is. Hello. Sorry.
I want you to sing.
It actually aligns quite well because the vast majority of temple programs and services and JCC programs do not occur at the same time. Predominantly, their religious services, which occur on Friday nights and some Saturdays, the JCC is closed Friday nights and Saturdays. During Jewish holidays and festivals, when they would have services, the JCC is closed. When the plan also provides, for instance, for the temple to use the JCC preschool classrooms for their religious school. Our preschool is for children ages 2.5 to 5 and runs Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Their religious school runs 3 evenings a week, but it occurs no sooner than 4 o'clock and on some nights 6 o'clock after our preschool has left by 3 o'clock. So the vast majority of programs and services do not even occur at the same time. And most other programs and events that the synagogue might run on a Saturday or a Sunday evening, the JCC, in fact, the whole campus closes at 4 o'clock on Saturday and Sundays. So when they would be using the spaces in the evenings, again, we're closed.
Okay. And then on Fridays, what's your closure time on Fridays
So
for the JCC?
we close during the spring and summer months when the sun goes down later. We close at 5 o'clock. In the wintertime, we close often as early as 4 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Skibar? Another question?
Madam Chair, thank you.
Yes.
Are the facilities rented out to any other organizations for use?
We do not engage in, we don't have any rental business. There are times when we have members who might rent a room for a birthday party or an event like that, and we do collaborative programs with other organizations, but we are not in the business of renting space. We use the space and we have a robust array of programs and services. There would rarely be any time when there would be available space for rental.
So all that's pretty much predetermined or scheduled ahead of time?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's all scheduled ahead of time, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Glenn from the board?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Conley?
Thank you. Mr. Skubar triggered my brain. That's why he sits next to me. Would you, if so approved, would you agree to a condition that both entities would not be open at the same time? So that,
I don't know that we could do that. And what I mean by that is, so our regular operating times, Monday through Thursday, we're open at 6 o'clock in the morning, we close 9 o'clock at night. Friday, we open at 6, we close at 5. Saturday and Sunday, the facility opens at 7 a.m. The JCC opens at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and the whole facility closes at 4 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays. During the course of what I'll call the business week, the normal operating week, the temple, their staff is there and conducting business. We're there and running all of our programs and services and health and wellness and so forth. So we would naturally be open at the same time. During the course of the business week, again, just using that as a term of art, the temple has a staff of approximately 5 people, and while they're open for business, there's not a lot of programmatic activity that goes on, but we are both open at the same time.
okay, I should have been more detail on that. That's my thing, is if there's programs going on between the synagogue and between the JCC, if there's 400 people there for each, we got a problem.
Oh, yeah.
I'm throwing numbers out there.
Certainly. I can tell you that generally speaking, for instance, for the synagogue's services, they typically get as few as a dozen or 15 people to as many as 40 or 50 people. Again, the JCC runs a whole array of programs and services throughout the course of the given day and into the evening. People come and go to exercise in the fitness center, to swim in the pool, to play in the gymnasium, to do the variety of programs and services. It is a rare occurrence when there would be a large mass of people other than, for instance, a community activity. For instance, the township menorah lighting for Hanukkah, you'd have a large group of people from the community that typically runs about 150 to 175 people. There may be a time when we do a joint evening program on a Saturday night with another organization. Again, you might have 150, 200 people. There wouldn't, even in those cases, be more than whatever that program is. There wouldn't be another program of that magnitude scheduled at the same time.
Okay.
Just as a function of space. And also, very often when it's those community programs, we're actually doing them collaboratively with the temple and other organizations, so it would be a shared program in most of those cases.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Glenn? Moving along, Mr. Shire?
Okay, I call
Yep, that's working too. And if you feel more comfortable there, that's fine.
This is fine.
Mr. Lieber, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do.
And please state your full name for the record.
Michael Lieber. I am the current president.
expansion of the JCC for a new facility.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Since 1961, Temple Emmanuel has been serving the Edison and Greater Middlesex County community. While we are a Jewish temple, our walls have offered sacred space for many other local secular and non-secular organizations, ranging from Girl Scouts of America to specific religious organizations and groups. Our clergy serves the needs of our 200 member units, I should specify, and are integral members of the Metuchen and Edison Interfaith Clergy Association. We have maintained a food pantry to service low-income families who suffer from food insecurity. We also serve Legal Services of New Jersey, helping families in need by collecting clothing, school supplies, toiletries, and gifts for the holidays. We are a group who has always looked out for and given back to our local community. The sale of our sacred building to Hackensack Meridian will allow JFK to increase their capacity of care and simultaneously has given us a chance to create something even more impactful for the township of Edison. With your approval of this project, Temple Emmanuel and the JCC of Middlesex County will be able to expand their educational offerings and additional programming to further support our town. Having two staples of the community come together and be able to pool resources will allow us to serve even more residents, giving back to the same people who we call neighbors. On behalf of our board and our congregation, I sincerely thank the township for all of its support over the past 6 decades and into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Lieber. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Lieber? Thank you, Mr. Lieber. Moving along, Mr. Shire.
Call Greg Elko.
Sir, do you want to raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name for the record.
Gregory Elko, E-L-K-O.
Mr. Elko is being offered as a licensed professional engineer of the state of New Jersey. He has testified more times than I can count before more boards than I can count, including the prior approval of the expansion of the JCC in 2020. I offered him as a licensed professional engineer.
Okay, we'll accept his qualifications.
Thank you.
Mr. Elko, you participated in preparing the site plan for this application?
Yes.
And could you very briefly describe to the board the existing situation on the premises?
Yes, I'm going to refer to a drawing I have here that was submitted as part of the application. Do I need to mark this?
You don't. It's one of the drawings in the packet with the original submission, right?
Yes.
Okay, so just reference it. That's fine.
All right. So reference, I'm referring to our drawing GI-101. It's titled General Location Plan. It's last revised June 17th, 22.
We're playing switch microphones tonight,
Thank you. This is much better.
like musical chairs.
Okay, so for purposes of this particular plan, north is straight up. As was noted, this is the property at 1775 Oak Tree Road. The facility is this building in white. This is the existing JCC facility. Immediately adjacent to it on the adjacent lot is the YMCA facility. The subject site is block 643, lot number 15. It's about 6.2 acres in size. You can see it fronts on Oak Tree Road. The YMCA building is on the lot immediately adjacent to that property. I just want to point out here that both buildings are on the lot line. They basically share the facilities. And there's a couple of existing nonconformities that are there. This will become relevant later for the zoning testimony, but there's zero setbacks and there's zero buffers between those two buildings. That's an existing condition. The parking arrangement, there is an existing 202 stall parking lot that is shared. It's in a cross easement agreement between the two uses. There is an existing driveway, a full movement driveway out to Oak Tree Road on lot 15, and there's an emergency access driveway out to Oak Tree Road on lot 16. The site is served by public utilities. The topography in the area where the improvements will occur is relatively flat. It's around elevation 122 or so. Some other features that you'll see here to the southern part of the site and towards the eastern property line, there's woods. There's an area of wetlands as well, which I'll explain in more detail in a bit. Surrounding the site is in the RA zoning district, and to the north and to the east and to the south is generally the RA zoning district as well. The YMCA building is also in the RA zoning district, and then further to the west is the OS Office Services District. Just to talk about, I'll briefly mention previous approvals for the site. The original project was built after an approval in 1976. Then in 2007, the YMCA applied for and received approvals for variances and a plan to construct an addition. And then in May 2020, we were before this board and received an approval for a different version of what's being proposed tonight. That approval was for a different building, it was for a different parking arrangement, where we did get several variances, but that was not constructed. As was stated, the program was sort of replaced by the current program, which I'll present now. So this drawing is drawing CS-101. It's titled Site Plan. It's also last revised June 17th, 2022. This application was originally filed in March of this year. We received several review letters from the township consultants in April and May, and then it was resubmitted on June 20th. So what I'm presenting to you is what you have in your packages is the last plan that addresses a lot of the comments that were in that letter. But what we have here is the existing JCC building, and the proposed building is about 21,616 square feet in size. It's represented in this light shaded area. Now, north is straight down on this plan. Sorry about the difference between the previous plan. So the expansion is towards the east side, which is the left side of the plan. Some features of the site plan include a proposed courtyard that's located towards the southern end of the building. There's improvements to the parking lot to add to add 21 parking spaces. Those spaces include a mix of standard spaces, handicap spaces, and electric vehicle parking spaces. In total, there are now proposed 223 parking spaces in the combined parking field. So there's actually 213 physical spaces. The electric vehicle, they count as double based on the new ordinance, the relatively new ordinance that Edison Township has adopted. So 213 physical spaces plus the 10 extra spaces that are counted double for the electric vehicle parking. The earlier version of the plan had the trash towards the residential properties on this side. That has been relocated to the side of the building and pulled back a bit. So improvements were made from the earlier version of the plan there. We added a loading space in front of the trash enclosure, which wasn't there before. And the plan also includes modifications for the impervious coverage. So when you were reading the original application, there was originally a variance that was requested for impervious coverage, but through the revisions, we were able to eliminate that variance. So there's no longer a variance for impervious coverage that is being requested for this application. The maximum is 30%. We're just below that. We're proposed 29.5%, and that was a result of the revisions that were made and resubmitted back in June. Regarding the loading area, so the loading space is around, it's located just in front of the trash enclosure. It's a 16-foot by 18-foot space. It's a smaller space, but this facility will not ever get the large trucks that you would think of in a normal like shopping center type of situation where they have the big tractor trailers. The only trucks that will come here to use that space that aren't the trash and the recycling trucks are passenger vehicles, passenger vans, or the small passenger trucks that will bring, say, food for catering or supplies or things of that nature. And so that loading space is going to only be used on a temporary basis, and it will not be used when obviously trash and recycling needs to be picked up. So we thought that was a good location for that. There was a recommendation about putting a sign in front of the trash enclosure to indicate this, and we'll certainly do that. Some landscape comments I'll note is that along the eastern property line, there is proposed an evergreen buffer between our parking lot and our facility and the existing residences that are there. That's in accordance with your town ordinance. That buffer consists of an evergreen planting, so there's white pines along the whole front there. At the time of planting, they're going to be 8 to 10 foot high, so an immediate screen when the plants are installed. And again, that's in accordance with the ordinance. I believe we were short one tree based on the review comments that we received, and we'll add that tree to the plan. But the development is compliant with the landscape requirements of the township. Also, talk about lighting. So The parking lot will be lit with new lights. We did a survey of the existing lot in front of the YMCA building. Even though it's off-site, it is a shared facility, so we needed to demonstrate that the lighting complied with your ordinance. And we found that the lighting levels were actually too low. They didn't meet the ordinance requirements. So the plans do show 2 new light poles in that parking lot and 2 lights, existing lights, whose fixtures will be replaced with new fixtures. And based on that, the lighting for that existing part of the facility will now meet the ordinance standard. So there's improvements for lighting proposed there. I'll note one thing. There's an ordinance section related to a pipeline buffer. That's your section 37-4.21.b. This specific section talks about setbacks from transmission lines. And the requirement is 75 feet. So we contacted the utility companies, and 2 of them verified that they have facilities within the vicinity of our site. One is Enbridge, and they confirmed that their facilities are more than 75 feet away. The other is Elizabethtown Gas, and they confirmed that they have an 8-inch transition main along the northern side of Oak Tree Road. And when you apply this 75-foot buffer, it's barely onto our property, but there's a couple of limited improvements that are proposed that are within that 75-foot. Notably, they are the few sections of sidewalk replacement along the frontage, some curb replacement, the edge of the new parking stalls that face that. There's no what I would consider to be substantial digging associated with those improvements. There's no utilities, there's no drainage within that 75 feet. So I would submit to you that we would ask for a waiver from the exact requirements of your ordinance, which says that no development is permitted within 75 feet of that setback. We have very limited improvements that are proposed technically from that pipeline. The application was submitted and needs the following variances, and I'll just read these for the record. What we'll do then is I'm going to give testimony for the parking variance. And then we have our planner, Sean Moronsky, is going to give the testimony for the remaining variances. So that's how we'll do this tonight, if that's okay. So the new variance is section 37-11.1. We need a variance to expand the existing community center facility use, which was approved by a previous variance in the RA district. And in that same section, we also need a variance to permit the proposed conference and event space use. That's going to be within the place of worship, where a conference and event space use is not permitted in the RA district. We also need a variance to permit a minimum setback for accessory uses of 0 feet. A place of worship requires a setback of 25 feet, and because that is going to be in the existing building and in its expansion, which is adjacent to that lot line, we need a variance for that. There's no setback. Again, we need a variance from section 37-11.3C to permit a floor area of 18%, where 10% is permitted in the RA district. And section 37-60.3 for parking to permit 223 spaces, where a minimum of 264 spaces are required. And I'll get to that in a minute. Some existing nonconformities to remain, again, for the record. Section 37-11.1, the membership recreation facility use in the RA zone will remain. That's a nonconformity. Section 37-10.3B, a planted buffer of 0 feet where 25 feet is required, again, along that common property line where the 2 buildings meet. Section 37-10.3.C, a minimum setback of 0 feet where 75 feet is required for conditional uses, again, that same lot line. And section 37-63.1, a minimum side yard setback of 0 feet where 15 feet is required. Again, that same lot line. So those 2 buildings together on that lot line is causing a variety of non-conformities. So I was going to present my parking variance testimony. Would it be appropriate to stop for answer questions for site plans, or should I just keep it?
No, you can keep going, except you said 264 spaces. I thought the required was 243. I just want the record to be clear.
It is
and correct.
264.
264.
Correct.
I'm looking at you, Mr. Fletcher. we have 243 here. So if it's 264, then we're 264 to 223. We're 41 spaces shy.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Yes, explain, please.
trying to calculate the parking for this particular mix of uses has been a challenge because, as you heard in the testimony, their proposal is that they're essentially going to share some parts of the building. So we wanted to make sure that we didn't double count those spaces. So we calculated the parking requirement to be based on the existing community center of 19,000 some odd square feet, and that's an existing situation, and that would be 90 spaces. And the proposed space, which is a combination of office, worship, and educational space, and that sums to, that's 100, I believe it's 123, 33, 40, 153 spaces. What also complicates the parking calculation is that we're in a shared situation with the YMCA building, which also has its own parking calculation. So at the end of the day, we went through all this and we calculated that the total requirement on lot 15, which is the JCC Emmanuel lot, is going to be 243 spaces. That's what's required on lot 15.
Okay.
But it's certainly, and you can see that there's 223 spaces provided when you count the EVCS credits.
Right,
So we're
well,
giving them
that's
credit.
what I'm trying to get at, because
Right.
Mr. Elko said 264, so that gives them a much bigger deficit of parking. So, but if,
Right, so-
we should be correct.
Right, no, I
Everything
believe
should
it's
have the correct
243, and I think
243.
I think the discrepancy is that we are not counting, there's some space that's described as conference space, and we didn't double count that. It was either
Okay.
worship office or it was JCC space, and we took one or the other, and we thought it was more fair to not double count those spaces.
So we're going to use 243. That's a
that's-
better number.
That's a better number, absolutely.
I'm right, he's wrong.
I can, I've been told that before.
Yeah.
I can describe exactly what was presented when I go through this, because you'll see it's very clear.
Yeah, but 243 is,
That's fine, 243. Okay.
okay, you can keep going, and
All right, thank you very
then
much.
we'll bombard you with our questions.
No problem at all. All right, so what we did to support this, there's a document in your package. It's called Parking and Traffic Analysis. It's dated June 17th, 2022. I'm going to walk through that, the important facts from that.
see that.
The tables that I present to you are in that document. So there'll be specifically tables 1 and 2, which you may need to just look at to follow along here a little bit. I'll try to be as clear as possible.
Excuse me, Mr. Elko. Cassandra, I don't think it's in our packets.
And if it's not in your packages, I could present it anyway, because it's basically my testimony for tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have it in my original submittal either.
Okay, so I guess you'll just
What is it?
summarize for us?
I will summarize, and it basically is the outline of my testimony, so it's me presenting it now. And it's also on the plan.
Oh, okay. I was looking for something separate.
That's on the plan as well.
Yeah, okay. I
That's
was looking
correct.
for something separate. Okay, all right, I'm sorry, Mr.
All right, so
Elko, go ahead.
let me walk through this. So as I mentioned before, in existing conditions, there's 202 spaces that are provided. If you go back to the previous zoning approval for the YMCA, they required 187 spaces. So there's a few extra spaces that are required above the zoning. That's going back to the existing conditions. So this table, what I'm presenting to you again, this is also on the front page of the site plans, and I think it might be on the master site plan as well. So this chart calculates, it goes through the calculation of how we arrived at the required parking. And what we did is we broke down the existing uses, so it's the YMCA and the JCC use, and those uses based on the previous zoning approval were 187 spaces, as I said. Then we looked at the proposed uses. So we have the place of worship, the office space, and the educational space. Those are the three types of uses within the proposed facility that is being proposed here. And we broke down the square footage of those areas and arrived at individual parking requirements for those areas. Now, it is conservative because of what was described. It includes conference spaces, stairwells, reception areas, the teacher lounge. It includes things in this space to capture the entirety of the square footage of the building.
Right, but what I think, and Mr. Bletcher, please correct me if I'm mistaken, what you're going to have to do is revise that so we come down, so everything says 243. Because if you do this for 243, the resolution says 243, but someone goes to look at the plans and it says 264, there will be misconception.
That's not a problem.
So
we could do
I
that.
guess you probably should take off what Mr. Belcher said, the conference room and the meeting rooms to get you down to 243. Am I correct? Okay, fine, thank you.
That's
So
fine.
we're all on the same page.
That's fine.
Okay.
So what we did, so after calculating the required amount of spaces for each use, we then went through, and this is another table. This is exactly what Mr. Glynn presented in terms of what is open when. So this table goes through the existing facilities, the JCC and the YMCA, and the periods of time that they're open and closed. So for example, the JCC is open Monday through Thursday, 6 to 9, Friday, 6 to 5, closed Friday night, closed Saturday morning. They're open 1 to 4 on Saturday afternoon. They're closed Saturday night. They're open 7 to 4 on Sunday and closed Sunday night. And we did that for each and every single use. And at the end of that, what we did is we applied the required parking to those hours that they're open. If the facility was closed, then no parking is required. If the facility is open, then the required amount of spaces per your ordinance was applied. And based on that, we arrived at the 241 free parking spaces that are required for this facility by taking the largest of any period of time during the week or the weekend. Is that clear? So 243 spaces required. We have 223. What we then did is we conducted a parking study of the existing facility. So what we did is in May, during the busiest days of the week, Wednesday during the week and Saturday, the two busiest days of the facility, we counted the actual cars that were parked in those parking spaces. And what we found is that of the 202 spaces that are available at any period of time during any of those days, the most amount of cars that were parked in those facilities were 88 spaces. So less than half of the existing spaces were occupied. And we verified with Mr. Glynn and the facility ownership that those were the busiest days that would ever be experienced during the course of the week. So it's a conservative number, but on the busiest days, during the busiest periods of time, you have less than half of the parking spaces that are occupied. So we said of the 88 spaces that are occupied, we have 187 spaces available. It's about 100 spaces below what is required. And if you look at the delta between the 243 required and the 223 provided, it's only 20 spaces. So we have more than enough parking. Furthermore, what we did on top of that, we said, all right, assume that this facility will increase the membership. All right, so we're not looking at past data, but we're fast forwarding and looking in the future. It was reported to us that this facility could see an increase of about 10 to 15% membership increase. We applied a 20% membership increase to that parking study, and the resultant amount of cars that would be required would be 106. We're still about 85 spaces more than what we would need otherwise. Again, much more, it's 4 times as much as that delta between the 243 and the 233. So we're very comfortable that there's more than adequate parking here. We accommodated different periods of time that the different facilities will be open and closed. We accommodate when there's special events, and we accommodate the different types of uses that are going to be at this facility. And that's the conclusion of my testimony for the parking.
Okay. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Elko? Skibar.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just for my own clarity, and maybe Jim, if you can help me out here, you calculated the parking based on hours of operation. Is that accurate, that we can adjust parking based on hours of operation?
Can I?
Can't hear
So,
you.
Madam Chair,
Yeah,
so the simple answer is, for our ordinance is based on floor area. So that's all they're required to do. We plug in the numbers for how much floor area of office space, worship space, community center space, and it's really based on those numbers. So that's why the 243 requirement is really the requirement. They've sort of done calculations to sort of show, hypothetically, if all the facilities were opening, what realistically their need might be. But really the requirement is what our ordinance says is calculated by square footage of the facility, and that comes to 243 total. And by the way, that 243 does not include the YMCA space. It's just the JCC and proposed Emmanuel space.
And if I could further clarify, your ordinance does permit, there's a section 37-60.2N, joint parking facilities, which allows, in a situation where there is a church, they call it, or a place of worship, you're allowed to count spaces for uses that are open, and you don't have to count for uses that are closed, the parking spaces. And it's the point is that you have a joint facility where there's parking only when it is need to be. So that's in your ordinance too, as well, which we followed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Elko? Are you okay, Mr. Kamba? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Kamba.
so I'm assuming there's an agreement in place between the JCC and the YMCA for the shared parking.
Correct.
All right. And that'll remain in, when the Temple Emmanuel comes in, it'll remain in place.
Correct.
All right. So there's no chance that, at a point where they would sever the agreement and then we have a problem.
My understanding is.
No, there is a shared parking arrangement in writing with the YMCA. It is in effect and is not going to change.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Can we go
Mr.
back to, just to go back off of parking and just go to your engineering testimony?
Sure.
Within your engineering testimony, and within Mr. Bignell's report, he had asked for some clarity regarding deliveries at the same time as recycling and trash pickup.
Yes, they won't occur at the same time. We'll be sure that the operations for the center will schedule deliveries that will use that loading space at times other than when the trash and recycling will be picked up. And as was recommended, which is a good recommendation, we will put signage on the front of the gates to indicate that it's not a parking spot. It's striped out so that people shouldn't park there, but in case they want to, there'll be signs there to say that they can't do it.
And would you agree to a condition, if so approved?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And in terms of garbage and recycling pickup, are there current hours that that occurs?
I believe there is. I'm looking for it. Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Glenn, we could recall you to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah,
You wanna-
you're still sworn in, so you can come on back up, please. Do we have another?
Actually, you know what? So we'll go back to Mr. Glenn. We'll finish with you,
Sure.
then we'll go back to Mr. Glenn. All right. And then have you reviewed, and Mr. Carley is not here, have you reviewed the Delaware Raritan engineering report?
I have.
Okay. So would you agree to comply with the provisions of Mr. Carley's report?
Yes.
Specifically, I just wanted to address 6.5, the anticipated proposed fire suppression methods.
So Anthony Guzzo, our architect, will present on that.
Save that for him. We'll make a note of it. And then 8.1, regarding NJDEP's environmental monitoring system.
Yeah, that has to do with the fact that there's some regulated activities that are sort of in the general area. There's some deep water bedrock contamination. It's not going to affect this property, this site, because it's more than 30 feet down. And, for, purposes of clarity, that we added to the plan that there's public information that people can look to see where that information is. But the contractors shouldn't account contaminated groundwater. We're only digging down maybe 5-10 feet at the most.
Okay.
This is deep, so I'm not concerned about it.
Okay, all right. Mr. Carley is not here, so I just wanted to make sure that we,
Yep,
we covered
absolutely.
his issues. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
I just have a quick question. Mr. Shire, is the parking arrangement, is it a part of the deed, or is it just an agreement between the two?
It's a contract between the parties.
It's a contract.
It's actually,
Is it a recorded?
yes,
easement?
there's a recorded cross easement agreement.
Recorded cross
Yes,
easement.
it was recorded at the time of the transfer of title to that portion, that parcel of the property as part of the final agreement. It is a recorded document, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Elka? Yes, Mr. Barone.
Mr. Elkar, you made a reference to growth, and in your calculation, you said something that normal growth might be 10 or 15%, and you had calculated to 20%. Over how long a period of time do you see it going to 20%?
I believe that's long-term. That's within the, foreseeable future. Honestly, as it relates to parking, because I've done this a few times before, the longer we go into the future, the more electric cars there are going to be, and the more electric spaces there are going to be. And so it'll sort of offset each other, so I'm not too worried about that. But I would say that the 20% that was suggested represents at least the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Combo, was there something that we were waiting to ask Mr. Glenn?
Yes, but we were going to finish with.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Elko?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. O'Gorman.
did you say there was an issue with the pipeline buffer?
We are within that 75-foot. We're about less than 10 feet into it with what I would say is superficial improvements. Sidewalk replacement. It's along the frontage of our Oak Tree Road. There's some sidewalk replacements, there's some curb, and some pavement striping that are within the 75 feet. It's barely within it, but it sort of skims this front part of our improvements.
Did you say you need a waiver from us?
We needed, yes, I'm sorry, yes, thank you. That was suggested in one of the review letters, and yes, we do need a waiver.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bletcher?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just to clarify that, and I think this is actually going to help the applicant's situation. So for the pipeline buffer ordinance, a waiver would be appropriate if you're building miles from any pipeline and you can confirm that, and we don't need to follow up on pipeline letters from those pipeline operators. In this case, since development is proposed within 75 feet of that PSI pipeline, that this case, it's a variance situation because the ordinance says you're not allowed to build within 75 feet of that pipeline. So this is a variance situation, and I think the condition I would recommend to you, and I think this makes it a whole lot simpler, is just when they're doing excavation within 75 feet of that particular pipeline, they just need to reach out to that pipeline operator and comply with whatever safety requirements or safety supervision or whatever the specifics are, so that the pipeline operator is satisfied that we're not going to create a dangerous situation.
We would agree to that.
Okay, great. Thank you. That does make it a lot simpler. Any other questions of Mr. Elko? Okay, thank you, Mr. Elko.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Kamba with Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Glenn, with regard to current conditions and future conditions, what time is regular and the frequency of regular trash and recycling pickups?
Sure. We have private trash and recycling pickup, obviously. That is presently 1 day a week is garbage, is trash, and one day every other week is recycling. 2 separate dumpsters, obviously. Those are typically done sometime between 6 and 8 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it's not, just, I guess, as a function of whatever circumstances, Republic Services, who is the hauler, does it, but it is typically between 6 and 8 a.m. and I'll apologize, I don't remember the specific dates. I think I think the trash is Tuesday and the recycling is every other Wednesday, but I could be off on my day of the week, but that's what it is.
Okay. All right, and there's no issues, you have neighborhood complaints, resident complaints?
We've never had any complaints of any kind.
Okay, and then where your trash enclosure is proposed to be located, you're not, abutting the residential neighborhood, and that's?
No, in fact, I apologize for interrupting. It was specifically modified prior to the submission that you're
Correct.
working off of, to move it further away from and back from the adjacent residential properties.
Yes, and we appreciate that, and don't apologize for interrupting me. I've been married long enough, I'm used to it.
I'm used to doing that to my wife, so it's.
I'm just concerned that we're on live stream.
Yeah,
That's,
I know my wife's not watching, so
yeah,
I'm
hopefully
safe.
mine's not either,
Yeah.
She will be.
Nobody has to around.
Okay, so as long as we have Mr. Glenn back.
Use our architect.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and state your full name for the record.
Anthony Guzzo. I'm the principal in the firm of Guzzo Architects.
Can I have some qualifications, please, sir?
Sure.
Mr. Guzzo's testified as a.
I know, but I just need it for the record, Mr. Shire. I do it with everyone.
Yeah, I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey for over 20 years now. I also hold my license in about 5 other states around here. I'm a member of the AIA, American Institute of Architects. Also have an association with the NCARB, which is a National Council for Registry Board. I've testified before many boards before in the state of New Jersey and also outside.
Okay, thank you. We'll accept your qualifications, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Guzzo, you were hired by the applicant to design the proposed expansion.
Yes, I was.
Could you please give the board an overview of what you designed?
Sure. I have some exhibits here. They're the sheets that we had submitted to the board. So we have floor plans, elevations. Also, I brought a rendered colored elevation just to kind of give the board a feel for some of the materials that we have. So I will be referring to those documents, and they should have been submitted in that packet. I was the architect on the previous approval here, which was a smaller addition off to the same side, the easterly side. But this is, again, since we've kind of gotten to the shared agreement with the temple, we've kind of worked with both sides here to kind of come up with the shared facility that we feel works very well. We took some of the nods and the things that we had done on the original application, working through with the JCC, and then, of course, incorporating the temple aspect to this and all those shared rooms and services. So we did juggle a few things. There are some things that are here that were previously there, like a shared courtyard, which we feel is kind of important to both uses. We also have a spine that runs down the building and kind of links everything together. So what I'll do is I'll just give you an overview and I'll walk you through those spaces to give you some idea of what we're proposing. I'll be referring to our drawing F101, which is our first floor plan. You'll see at the lower left on the bottom of the page here is the north-facing elevation, which is Oak Tree Road, which is a continuation of the front, which is the Y, which is off to the right side. You'll have the common entry area. There's a gymnasium, and we're building about 108 feet along the front there off of the existing gym location. So what we did is you kind of see that central spine that's created a main entry area, which serves several purposes here. As Mr. Glenn was talking about, the original application and the proposed application was really serving a lot of senior programs. So what we wanted to do was give them a much easier access to a lot of the spaces that they would be utilizing during the day. So we kind of kept that same theme. So you'll notice that we have an entry lobby, a glass entry lobby. It serves the seniors coming in using the facility, but also serves as a secure entry. So what we did is we kind of created a man trap there. So everyone coming into the building, whether they're accessing the preschool during the day and during the week, we can control that now, where before you were entering into the YJCC lobby and it's very difficult to control. So what we're doing here is kind of entering a central control point, but then also serves as a temple control point. So everyone coming in here and accessing that would be coming into this entry. The preschool, which would be getting a lot of use during the week, would go right upstairs. That traffic kind of gets out of the way, so we have kind of a pickup drop-off area in front of the building there. They seem to be very efficient with it now. I think this proposal draws some of that traffic away from the regular JCCY entry. So we feel that that's going to function a lot better by pulling that entry away for the preschool during the week, pulling those cars a little bit further down on site, so we're not having such any type of backup issue with people using the gym or using the other facilities. So again, I think we're getting a lot out of creating this secondary entry. We've had some deep discussions about how we're going to control that, how we're going to monitor that. Again, bringing the temple use into that really plays into it. That it gets a little complicated, but we think that we have a good control plan ahead of us that we still have to work through. But we think with a control access and card access, we can successfully do that and control who uses what portions of this building, or at least we can monitor that. As you come into the site, you'll see that spine that runs along the outside of the existing gymnasium now. So we're actually building up against that wall. We're not going to undermine that. What we're going to do is, it's a rough textured block. We're going to finish that on the inside, and then we're going to build a two-story addition alongside of that. What we're going to do is we have a central corridor that leads down there, and it is a very long corridor. So we have some points along the way that are going to break up that space. We're kind of envisioning that corridor to be some sort of gallery space. So the finished wall of the outside of the old portion would kind of become this gallery along that corridor, and the spaces off to the east or the left side will be those spaces that are broken up. We have a lobby space that is the main entry to the social hall and sanctuary. A little further down, we have the lounge space that exits out onto the courtyard. And then at the end, we also have a more open stair, and we also have a larger meeting room. So there's kind of nodes along the way that kind of break up that length of circulation. We still maintain very good access back into the existing building. You'll see there's a corridor on our plan that kind of splits the pool side with the gym side, with some locker rooms and bathrooms in between there. But we're looking to renovate that corridor and have a very good, clean connection back to the other facilities back at the JCC, which is, again, the gymnasium and the pool and those facilities. So really, I think that the overall complex is going to function very well for them. And again, with stressing the senior services in the new portion, we'll kind of pull some of that activity away, give them much easier, much better access to all of the programs that they're planning, which they currently do run, and some of the things that maybe they haven't thought of yet, because again, with the outdoor facility in the courtyard that we're proposing, we see that space as kind of a general use space, which could be activities during the day for the seniors, utilized by the preschool if needed, and an overflow space as event space for the temple. So we feel that we're getting a lot of usage out of a nice smaller outdoor space. You'll see that, again, a lot of functional space happens in between that corridor, those node points, which is the lobby and the lounge. We have toilet rooms, a meeting room, some offices. And again, the front part of the building is really serving as the sanctuary space for the temple side. Most of those items along the front are the social hall and the sanctuary space, which is the larger two-story open space. Again, we're having a lot of discussions about the design of that space, a much newer space. We feel that's something that especially the temple wants to try to attract people with the interior design of that space. So I know that we're going to spend a lot of time with that. We have some additional support space a little bit further off to the left. We have a full kitchen. We have some clergy offices, and then, of course, the utilities, which are going to come in alongside that building. Since we started working through that part of the original application, we're kind of familiar with some of the utilities that are here. So we are going to be bringing in a lot of new utilities to the building along that side. We will be bringing in new electric, a larger electric feed and a transformer to backfeed the existing electric. So we're going to keep all of that in place. We're going to feed all of our new spaces, but also backfeed the old portion of the building. We're also going to bring our new sprinkler line in, and I know that was one of the comments there, so we feel that we have to do a little bit more investigation on the pressure, which I believe we had some information on initially on our older application. We're going to revisit that to make sure that with the larger building, we have adequate pressure, but we will be putting an NFPA full sprinkler system throughout the building, and I know that was one of the questions, but again, that would be one of the items that we would comply with during the submission of the drawings for a construction permit. Again, gas service, water service, we're going to be splitting the domestic water and the sprinkler, which is what we have been doing and normally been doing, but we typically will work with the town, have a call into them with our engineers, just to make sure that we're approaching that the right way. And again, with some of the data and testing that we would do, if this application is approved. So those are some of the next step items that we'll be taking care of. But we will be working along with the town just to make sure that is there any questions or any special things. We'll also be working with the utility companies to organize how those utilities come in. As we get towards the back of the space, you'll see how this new addition kind of steps back away. That was kind of honoring some of the DEP and the wetlands and the distance that we're staying away. So you'll see that along the front of the building, we're very wide and we actually get very narrow as we get back to that courtyard, and then we bump out. So we have a variety of different heights on this building. We also have a variety of different widths, and I think that's going to lend itself to a lot of interest and also minimize these long runs of facades that you might be exposed to, especially off to the left side of the building. Again, our main large meeting room is probably the largest room that we have and is a carryover from the JCC, which is going to be a main space for them. And it can hold a variety of different activities. We have some furniture layouts and a variety of movable furniture, and we've discussed events with them. So, we're kind of seeing that as kind of an endpoint to the building. It could be used as a shared space, but also could be used for many different functions. And again, those two meetings, a smaller meeting room, will have close access to the courtyard for any type of outdoor activity, plus letting a lot of light into the building. It is a longer building, so bringing in light and lighting up that corridor or gallery space is very important to us. Both spaces, you'll see two kitchen areas here, just to give you a little bit more detail. The kitchen space towards the front, which is right next to the sanctuary space, will be utilized for events. In the social hall, you'll see a connection there. We haven't worked through any type of details with the kitchen, but a little bit more kitchen equipment there. And then we have a smaller kitchen just serving some events and things like that. So, which is more towards a warming kitchen, which wraps around the back of the building. You'll see past that stairway, and there's some functional items like toilet rooms, but we kind of envision that the students will be utilizing those stairs to come down from upstairs and vice versa, going up there because of all the shared services with those classrooms. We're just creating a nice interior stairway to access. Up above, you'll see a much smaller footprint. So you'll see that the space off to the left, I'm referring to our drawing F102 on the second floor plan. We continue this corridor building up against the existing building to kind of be this spine that runs along the building with all of these extra spaces that are kind of multifunction. We're bringing some of the spaces, which is the youth lounge in the library, which is a temple space. We have classroom space, which was mentioned before, which is going to be kind of a shared space. It'll be used by the preschool and then also for religious education. And that's why we feel that, that back stair is important to us, but then also have the front everyday access with an elevator there for ADA, so we have full accessibility through that. And again, we are connecting back to the existing building on the second floor because that's very active right now with the preschool. So you'll see that there's going to be a new set of doors to access this new corridor, and then that accesses the other spaces of the other preschool classrooms. Again, that's generally an overview of the floor plan and layout. I'm going to refer to our third drawing that we submitted, which is A201, which is the exterior elevations. What I have for you also is a colored elevation, which just gives you an overview, an overall view of the actual JCC space, the existing off to the right, and then, of course, Temple and new spaces off to the left. But along the north elevation, we have our main elevation, again, off to the right with that circle window. That's the existing gymnasium that's there and the existing window. What we're doing, we're adding an exit door, and we're making a little better egress out of that gymnasium. Currently, that exits directly outside. With the new addition, we had to change that, so we're adding a door for, just for safety purposes, another way out of that gymnasium. And then the entry that I had discussed, which is going to be shared by all, will be right next to that, right to the left of the gymnasium. You'll see a larger glass area with a covered canopy. We want to provide a little bit of protection there for, just the elements and bad weather for everyone accessing the building. Excuse me. And then a little bit to the left, you'll see a glass area, and that denotes the sanctuary space. We're kind of been playing around with just some different finishes there. We want to try to set off the temple and sanctuary space with just a little bit higher level finishes. We're talking about a stone, more of a cultured stone, but a very nice look on the outside of the building to really kind of break up that front. We have some glass elements, so you'll see some activity in there. You'll see a little bit through there, and we had shown a rendition of kind of a flame, which they have at the existing temple that they were in, and we're looking to do maybe something similar, but we want some kind of visible and visibility into that space. Just to kind of promote some activity and bring a lot of light into this high two-story space. And then you'll see that the height differential that I was talking about, you'll see off to the left of that is a one-story area, and that's the clergy offices, and that wraps around to the left side. So you'll see these different heights along that side, which I think will really lend itself to minimize the size of the building, and I think the play between the different sizes and the different heights will really lend itself to an interesting building. Along the left side elevation, which we have, you'll see that we go back and we change some of the materials, and we're carrying some things through from the front. We carry some metal panels with some brick. Again, you're seeing some different heights there with the sanctuary in the background, the smaller offices, a one-story building, and to the front of it. The exposed courtyard, where it gets a little bit taller there because we have the exposed two-story building, and then the larger meeting room towards the rear. But again, that's a smaller element against a larger two-story building. Along the south elevation, you'll see that we have just a variety of different windows. We're trying to keep this light and airy, keep the meeting rooms bright, also have a lot of light coming into the social hall. So we're going to have a lot of glass access going from that social hall space out to the courtyard, and also kind of mimic that same thing in the lounge area, and also have access to from the meeting room to the courtroom. So we're giving a lot of access points, so we feel that could be utilized, and that could become a nice finished space outside. I think that's a good overview of what we were looking to do. I mean, there was a lot of challenges with this building. Again, working with all parties here and also the engineering on this to make sure that we, going through the steps for compliance with the wetlands and the stepping of the building. But, we're kind of excited to get into this new design and work with both parties and to kind of have these shared services here, which it's challenging, but I think it's going to make a very useful and vibrant building that's going to be utilized at different times during the day, and I think that's going to definitely be an asset to the whole facility here.
Okay, thank you. Does any one of the board members have any questions from Mr. Skibar?
Madam Chair, thank you. Just to confirm that I don't see any mechanical on the roof. Is there?
Yeah, we did not get into mechanical design. We had some preliminary conversations. That will be our next step. But we do have a parapet that runs around the building. So typically what we'll do on those units is we'll kind of provide a roof screening around those units, for any type of visual exposure that we might have.
Okay, that's what I just want to confirm. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Guzzo?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. O'Gorman?
you had mentioned the fire suppression system. Is there going to be a hot box?
I don't know yet. I did see that comment. We have to, as soon as we bring our engineer in, we will take a look at that. I know that was brought up, and we have done that before. So we're going to have to just, I guess, meet with him and then take a look at that. Is that something that we should get together with the town on?
Yes, Mr. Bignell is very opinionated about hot boxes. So when you get with your engineer, please get in touch with him.
Okay, yeah, that could be an early conversation, so we can have that early, and then we'll coordinate it back with the engineering team.
Okay, great. Yes,
And
Mr.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
if I may.
Yes, Mr. Fletcher.
Also, I heard in the testimony that there was going to be a transformer, ground-mounted utility transformer. So
Okay.
same thing with the hot boxes and the transformers. We like to make sure that those are screened. And
Right,
it seems like you've designed a beautiful facility here. What we don't want to do is just plop a transformer in the front lawn.
correct,
So-
yeah. And the hot box,
Hot
yeah.
box too,
So that's why
right, yeah.
you should get,
No,
okay.
agreed.
Okay. Mr. Kamba?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair. Would you, if so approved, would you agree to a condition that any rooftop mechanicals would be screened as well as the hot box and transfer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions of Mr. Guzzo?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
On your drawing here, on the F-101, you have the sanctuary, it's 176 seats, correct?
Yes,
Then in the back, we have the movable partitions.
correct.
Do you anticipate having seating in there for services, additional seating?
No, the space is just going to open up for that for smaller groups. When the services we have seating in the front for basically all of the holidays. There are just some holidays that we could bleed over into that social hall depending on the number of members that are going to show up for services.
All right, again, I'm just asking because of parking is the concern. Would you make that a condition then, that there's no seating in the social hall? Additional seating?
Yeah, I think that they just, typically it's only going to be on some high holidays, I believe, from some of the conversations that we've had.
Mr. Bleacher, excuse me, Mr. Bleacher, if we're just going on the square footage, do we have to be concerned? Because I know you said that the 243 was based on the square footage, so if we're basing
So-
on square footage, we're not basing on amount of seats, correct?
The parking calculation is based on the total area of the assembly space. And the assembly space includes both what's labeled as sanctuary and what's labeled as, is it social hall?
Okay.
Yeah. So assembly is assembly, whether you're sitting there for, in rows doing some sort of prayer service or whether it's social, having something to eat or something in the social space. Assembly is assembly. And the total area, it's based on a total assembly of
Of the combined, so we don't have a problem if one flows into the other.
6,347 square feet. So that's the whole,
Thank you.
assembly space.
Okay, great. Mr. Guzzo? I'm sorry. Any other questions for Mr. Guzzo? Mr. Barone?
Minor question. Nice presentation, Mr. Guzzo.
Thank
And a
you.
beautiful building.
Thank you.
Just curious, what kind of service will the shared courtyard be?
We're thinking in nice weather, some senior activities going out there, and also Again, with nice weather, maybe the preschool, one of the preschool classrooms go out there for some outdoor activity.
No, I was asking the surface. Is it concrete? Is it grass?
We have not really designed that out yet. We had some discussions. We're really kind of thinking just a pavered area.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Skiwa?
Just along those lines, you mentioned, the courtyard. Is there an outdoor play area for the preschool?
There is currently it's actually kind of tucked away behind the existing building, and that will be maintained. So it won't become a playground or play yard. That all happens currently in an existing location.
Okay, and that's existing, and it's all.
Yes, that's existing. There's play equipment there.
Thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Leacher, if the courtyard isn't planned out, however they plan it out, is that going to affect impervious coverage? Or maximum building coverage eventually?
I believe on the site it's noted as impervious.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's not going to count as building coverage because there's no roof over it.
I'm sorry,
Right.
impervious.
Right, no, in terms of impervious coverage, yeah, we can look at the calculation, but I don't think it's going to send them over the.
Okay,
I mean,
fine.
it's a six acre site and it's a relatively small area, so I think they should be okay.
Okay, fine, okay. Any other questions of Mr. Guzzo? Okay, yes.
sorry, I'm
Oh,
back.
hi, Mr. Elko.
I'm back, I'm sorry. I can answer the question. The plans that were submitted call the courtyard impervious.
Okay.
But it gives the option to make it pervious.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it, okay. Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Shire, moving on.
Yes, we do have our traffic engineer here. If the board needs his testimony, the board felt that the last application, Mr. Elko's testimony was sufficient on that issue and did not wish to hear our traffic engineer, but we do have him here if the board has any questions.
Well, if he's here, I guess not let him waste his evening. We might as well hear what he has to say.
All right, I call Mr. Lothian.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name for the record.
Alan Lothian.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last name, sir?
Lothian, Lothian.
Okay. Can we have some qualifications, please?
Sure. I'm an associate with Langen. I've been there over 24 years. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Rutgers, a Master's of Science in Transportation from NJIT. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey in good standing, and I've testified before dozens of boards throughout the state.
Okay, thank you. We'll accept your qualifications, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Lothian, you heard, obviously, Mr. Elko's testimony regarding parking
Correct.
on the site, and would you have anything to add with regard to parking or circulation regarding the plan?
No, I would just like to confirm that what Mr. Elko presented to the board with the fact that we do have sufficient parking and in fact in excess of parking compared to what's actually required, it will allow the site to function appropriately in the future.
That's the parking, but how about traffic?
No, so this site circulation will continue to be efficient, and with the different operating uses throughout the day, it spreads out traffic throughout the day. So again, we anticipate that the operations will be efficient.
Board have any questions? Mr. Combo?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any school buses in terms of drop-off in the morning and exiting at the end of the school day?
Want to come up, Mr. Glenn? Maybe you should just stay there. Save you
My understanding is
steps
there
back
are a
and
couple,
forth.
but they're very limited, but you would get a more definitive answer from.
School buses?
No, so there are no activities in which conducted by either the JCC or the synagogue that involve school buses. There are from time to time, if we're having a trip to a theater or something for some of our adult programs where there may be a charter bus. Once a month, the fourth Monday of every month, we run a trip to Atlantic City. I don't remember which casino. We run a senior trip to Atlantic City, so there is a charter bus that comes approximately 7:30 in the morning and comes back about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. That's once a month. I think they do it 9 months out of the year. But for that, we don't have any bus service of any kind for either the JCC or Temple Emmanuel.
Okay, I'm looking at this more of an analysis in terms of if, there's school buses adding into the traffic coming in and out of the site in the morning and then during dismissal.
We don't. For our preschool, it's all either parents dropping off by vehicle, or we have many of our parents actually walk their children from either the residences in the area or the apartments in the area. So we don't have any transportation there.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Skibar, I saw you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to expand on this, so for the senior services, is there any pickup and drop-off services for the senior programs?
There is nothing that we provide. There are some times when some of our seniors will get a ride share service or a county service, or I know there are some of the seniors that come from the place that's by JFK, Whispering Knoll, and they have a shuttle that takes them over to some of our programs, typically once or twice a month. They typically take either 2 or 3 people. It's the same people every time, but that's the extent of it.
Okay.
We don't have any designated services, no.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Comba's up again. I interrupted him. I didn't realize he wasn't finished.
I'm off of you, Mr. Glenn. I'm going to go back to the traffic engineer.
Listen, I got to play your zoning board wife, so, you know.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. So did you do any type of analysis as to peak hours and entrance and exit to the site?
We didn't. We looked at the parking primarily for the site because that was the most concern with respect to the application.
So you didn't do any type of analysis as to when there's X amount of cars coming out of the site, X amount of cars coming into the site?
No, we did not.
A number make a right, B number make a left.
Again, the major difference between this application and the previous application that was approved is the worship space, which happens after the bulk of the activity during the street peak hours.
I understand that. I just want to get some flavor as to what we're looking at in terms of traffic.
Okay. We did not perform an analysis, and there was none requested by the board professionals either.
I think so. Mr. Fletcher, do you have any notes? I thought one of the things that Mr. Bignell requested was a traffic report. I have on my notes, need to get traffic report.
And Madam Chair, what that essentially means in this case is a report. Exactly what was provided was traffic in terms of parking and on-site traffic and on-site circulation.
Okay.
Because the uses are, I'm not going to say permitted, but contemplated by the ordinance. It's not a report where we're looking for what's the trip generation, because
Okay.
it's sort of permitted or contemplated uses in the zone. It's really just the board should be, and you can ask whatever questions you want in terms of traffic and site circulation and the ability of those vehicles to maneuver into and out of the site, the intersections where it intersects with the road, the parking, site circulation on site in the parking lot, making sure the flow of the parking lot is going to work. But again, it's not something where we ask for trip generation information.
Okay, I misunderstood when Mr. Bignell asked for that. Anything else, Mr. Comba? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, moving along, Mr. Shire.
Right, my last witness is Mr. Sean Moronsky, who is our planner.
Good evening.
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, so help you God?
I do.
And would you please state your full name for the record?
It's Sean, S-E-A-N, Moronsky, M-O-R-O-N-S-K-I.
Mr. Moronsky is being offered as a professional planner in the state of New Jersey.
Some qualifications, please.
Sure. I'm with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services in Parsippany, New Jersey. I have a master's in urban planning from New York University. I'm a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners since 1999, New Jersey licensed professional planner since year 2000. My license is current. I I've been qualified as a professional planner in over 100 municipalities in New Jersey and in several other states, and have appeared here in Edison before both boards on other occasions.
Okay, thank you. We'll accept your qualifications.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Moronsky, you've heard the testimony this evening regarding this application, and you're familiar with the plans prepared by Langen Engineering.
Yes, I am. I've reviewed, obviously, the plans prepared by Langen, the architectural plans prepared by Mr. Gozzo. I reviewed your board professionals' correspondence, visited the site and the surrounding area, and also reviewed the relevant sections of your zoning ordinance and master plan documents.
And with regard to the requested variances, could you please give your testimony as to whether they would be justified under all the facts of this matter?
Yes, and Mr. Elko went through the list of variances. He mentioned several non-conforming conditions, many having to do with setbacks for buildings and buffers, which have to do with the buildings being connected with lot lines 15 and 16. Those are not changing. I'll start off with the D1 use variance. The community center use, which is existing, which was approved by variance, but the expansion is not permitted in the RA zone. And also the conference and event space within the place of worship is not permitted also. And both the community center expansion and the conference and event space in the place of worship, they're inherently beneficial uses as the entirety of the complex. I believe there's a community complex called, which I believe qualify as inherently beneficial, which are uses which serve a greater public purpose as outlined in the municipal land use law. As Mr. Glynn and Mr. Lieber talked about the respective uses, the JCC has been in service at the location for over 38 years, provides programs to a wide range of the community in terms of religious faith, varying different age categories, special needs, preschool, senior programs, so on and so forth, in addition to their collaboration with the YMCA, which is approaching its 20th anniversary. And with regards to Temple Emmanuel, its congregation has been in the community for approximately 60 years. The joining of these institutions at this location makes eminent sense, and both continue to serve an inherently beneficial purpose. So by virtue of these uses being inherently beneficial, the positive criteria is addressed because it does serve a greater public purpose. Now, in order to address the negative criteria with regards to inherently beneficial uses, there's something that's referred to as a Sika test. Sika is the name of the case that involves inherently beneficial uses. And there are 4 prongs to that test that have to be addressed. The first being is the board has to identify, well, what is the public interest at stake here with regards to this application? And with regards to both the JCC and Temple Emmanuel, it's the ability of the JCC to provide the range of services to various community groups while being able to provide those services in an efficient manner. Modernization was talked about, the need for greater space, but not just in terms of the amount of space, but in terms of being able to be more spread out, especially as we've learned through the COVID-19 pandemic that there are differing needs depending on the type of community services offered. With regards to Temple Emmanuel, moving to this location is ideal to serve its congregation here and also integrating their community services, as was mentioned in previous testimony, at this location. So with regards to the second part of the criteria, we identify any detrimental effects that are perceived that would result if such a variance were granted. Obviously, with a building expansion, there are concerns that it encroaches closer to particular lot lines, and in this case, it's getting closer to the eastern lot line, and your neighbors to the east are residential uses. There's concern about additional floor area where it could increase the intensity of use or parking needs. As previous testimony discussed, concerns about conflicting events and how it might affect parking and circulation. When you build more building or potentially add more impervious surface, concerns about stormwater or other environmental concerns, also concerns about tree removal. And what about lighting, and whether that could have impact on the surrounding area. So we outlined these potential concerns, and the third prong is to reduce any perceived detrimental impact. The board may impose, if practical, reasonable conditions on the use. Or with regards to the expansion, the building addition does not violate any setback requirements nor building coverage. The building addition is still a substantial distance from the side lot line. We're meeting the required setback. The overall floor area ratio in the zone, which is 0.25, we still meet it. It's 0.18. With regards to concerns about conflicting events, the JCC, as mentioned, is closed on Friday nights, Saturday nights, and holidays. Many of the times when the temple would be having services, which in many cases you're not going to have these conflicting situations. As was previously discussed with the parking testimony, that when reviewing the parking in real time in terms of Saturdays, that there was ample parking available when reviewing activity at the site. The site plan will be consistent with NJDEP and township regulations. We're meeting the impervious coverage requirement. There are additional shade trees planted on the east side, parking lot islands and perimeter. Other plantings at the parking lot edge near the courtyard and building addition. The site still retains a substantial wooded area toward the rear of the site near the residential lots, and the lighting is designed to minimize spillage beyond the lots. So the fourth requirement is to weigh the public interest being advanced against what's left to the negative criteria and determine whether the granting of the variance would cause substantial detriment to the public good. That adding the proposed addition and the other improvements enhances the use at the site. Adding the house of worship, which is a permitted use in the RA zone, can be very easily and efficiently integrated into this site, the community complex, so to speak, which has been operating for 38 years, providing services and programming to the entire community. And that Temple Emmanuel fits in with the mission of the JCC, and the proposed improvements are consistent with the standards for an inherently beneficial use and addressing the negative criteria concerns per the Sika four-prong test. Mr. Elk also mentioned there is a variance regarding FAR, and this is specific to the recreational, what is called the recreational facility aspect of the building. There's a conditional use requirement, 10% is the maximum, and we're proposing 18%. Now, for a D3 conditional use variance, this is again addressed by the negative criteria because the use is permitted except for meeting a particular condition. Although we do exceed that particular requirement, as I had mentioned with regards to the use variance, when you look at the overall site, we're well below the FAR as is outlined for the RA zone. We're adding not only more meeting rooms for community uses, we're modernizing operations, enhancing the operations and the ability of the organization to carry out its mission and stated purpose. So with regards to the negative criteria, there's no substantial detriment to the public good. The overall FAR for the site is not exceeded. And the site plan, as is noted, addresses potential impacts with regards to setbacks, other design issues that might be associated with the building design. And there's no substantial detriment to the zoning ordinance or master plan. Your master plan land use designation for this site is place of worship and cemetery. The place of worship is permitted. While the community center is religiously affiliated, it's not specifically a place of worship, but the site has operated at this location for 38 years in the residential zone as part of the overall community complex. We have a few C variances to address. One had to do with the minimum setback for accessory uses related to the place of worship. 25 feet is the minimum, 0 is provided. This is due to the design of the building. The buildings on Lot 15 and 16 are connected as the condition for the site. This is similar to the existing non-conforming conditions for setback on the side lot lines that already exist on the property. Mr. Elko and Mr. Lothian talked about the parking spaces, the parking space variance. The uses, as noted, have different peak times throughout the days. In the report that was provided, there were various times on Saturdays when it was noted that substantial numbers of spaces were available throughout during the Saturday peak demands and also during the weekday peak demand also. So the proposed parking supply is able to address concerns during the peak times. And with regards to the no disturbance within 75 feet of a pipeline, this is in reference to the pipeline in Oak Tree Road. Mr. Bleacher had mentioned about there being a condition, if there's any excavation, that there would have to be contact with the respective utility, and that's something that Mr. Elko mentioned we'd agree to. And I do believe that all these variances could be granted under the C2 criteria, where the benefits of granting the variances outweigh the potential or perceived detriments, of which I believe are minimal to none. We have to address how we're furthering the purposes of zoning with these variances. Purpose A, appropriate use of lands to contribute to the general welfare. The requested variances help to contribute to an improved JCC to address better meeting its community program, and also in concert with Temple Emmanuel to provide its congregation a home and also to continue its fulfilling its community purpose. Purpose G, providing sufficient space in appropriate locations according to respective environmental requirements to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. The site is already well established for these type of inherently beneficial community uses, and as through both the site and the architectural testimony, that the site and the proposed design help to further, with these variances, help to further the purposes of each of these organizations. With regards to the negative criteria, there's no substantial detriment to the public good. The parking addresses the needs as discussed in previous testimony and in the report provided. The site plan addresses potential impacts to the surrounding area and to the site regarding stormwater, landscaping, and lighting. There's no substantial impact detriment with regards to the zoning ordinance or master plan. As with mentioned with the conditional use variance, our master plan land use designation, although it is place of worship and cemetery, the community center is established at this location and is consistent with similar inherently beneficial uses. And with regards to the land use goal in your master plan, discouraging deviations from established land use patterns that would permit incompatible and/or conflicting land uses being developed adjacent to one another. Well, this site, through its history, has shown that it has the several uses. The place of worship that's proposed is permitted. There is the preschool on site. Private nonprofit schools are permitted. Private membership facility is a conditional use, and then the conference and event space, which works in concert with the other inherently beneficial uses. So with regards to how these uses fit in with the site and the surrounding area, I do respectfully request that the variances be granted for the reasons given. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any questions from Mr. Moronsky? None. Oh, I do. Okay, yes, Mr. Conklin.
Sure.
Yep.
Have you, if we can go through the Big Now Planning Report?
Yes.
Todd?
Is this the one dated September 8th?
That is correct.
Yes.
So I will yield to Mr. Bletcher, but a particular importance that I was looking at was Plan Review Comment C. The applicant would verify that the 2020 site plan approval would be abandoned with this approval, if so granted.
Yes, once this approval is final, that will be abandoned.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Todd, you're up.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Based on my my notes and the testimony provided, I believe all of the items in the planning report have been addressed. So.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Conlon?
I'm good. Thank you,
Okay.
Madam
Before we go any further, Ms. Shaw and I have been discussing something, and she wants a 5-minute break. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, please.
Skip.
Okay, Cassandra? Okay, we're back on Mr. Shire. Ms. Shaw has something to clarify the record, please, and then we're going to go to Mr. Fletcher for some clarification also. Ms. Shaw?
Okay, so just to clarify, because the notice also indicates FAR, and you have lot coverage that's also on your original application. So we're going to need an amended application that's going to indicate that the only two variances being sought are use and parking, and that parking, you have in your original application 274 are required, but through testimony today, we know it's 243. So we would want that amended, and I think Mr. Fletcher is going to explain a little bit about this use.
Sure. So we are in the RA zone, and the RA zone refers to the RAA zone for some of its standards. So they're essentially the same thing. And what that zone says is that the Township of Edison has something in its definitions of uses, right? So industrial, commercial, residential. It has something called a membership recreational facility. And that's essentially what this facility is. And that is a permitted use in the RAA zone, so long as that it's on a lot of 5 acres or more, and this lot has more than that. The second criteria would be that it has a planted buffer of 25 feet in depth with fencing provided between that area and adjacent lot lines, and that particular condition is not met on this facility. The new building is 54 feet from the lot line, but the reconfigured parking lot encroaches into that 25-foot required buffer area. And there's a third criteria here that reads that no building should be located within 75 feet of any lot line, or, this is a separate clause, should have a floor area greater than 10% of the lot area, nor shall any building exceed 2 stories or 25 feet in height. So all of these provisos are part of the definition of what a permitted membership recreation facility is. So again, so the ordinance says, in this zone, you can have a membership recreational facility so long as it's on 5 acres, doesn't exceed encroaches the buffer, and it doesn't exceed more than 2 stories, 10% on the lot. So if you wanted to be super conservative in your reading of the ordinance, you would say that because this facility, by definition, doesn't meet all of those provisos that are built into the definition, that a variance is needed. And I term that as they need a variance from the definition, because the use is contemplated, that the ordinance contemplates that you would have a membership, private recreation membership facility in the zone, as long as you sort of meet these other criteria with the lot area and the building size. And the facts of this application are they don't. So we noted in the plan report that that's where the variance is, and the testimony you've heard tries to address those variances. Okay. That's for the JCC. The house of worship is a different use, and in this particular zone, houses of worship are permitted on lots of 3 acres or more, provided that no accessory use is within 25 feet of a lot line. And in this particular situation, the lot area has 3 acres or more. There's about 6 acres. But again, that parking lot encroaches within that 25-foot area. And there's also parking right up to and over the property line where we have the shared lot line between the JCC and YMCA on the other side of the site. So for that reason, we noted in the report that the proposed house of worship isn't technically contained within that definition that's specified in the ordinance, and that they would need a variance from that.
Okay.
Does that, I hope that clarifies
Yes,
things.
I think
Right.
we're okay with that. Ms. Shaw? you wanted
Just
to add?
to clarify the record further, there are other variances, but those variances are existing nonconformities, so they aren't noticed because they are part of the existing structure.
Okay. Having said that, I assume I called for more questions. No one had more questions, so at this point, I will go out to the public. Anyone within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Sir, you want to come up, please?
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And please state your full name for the record, providing your address.
My name is Pantaleo William Gadaletta. I live at 5 Fishel Road, Edison. My property backs the JCC YMCA property.
Okay, what would you like to tell us, sir?
I have
Please.
Pantaleo, Gadaletta, Gadaleta. I have 3 concerns. One, the first concern is I'm not entirely clear on the wooded buffer between the back of the JCC and my property, if that's going to be encroached any.
Mr. Bleecher? We'll have an answer for you in a minute.
This also affects my
Yeah,
neighbors.
Madam
to
Chair,
my
maybe
left
Mr.
as
Elko
well.
can just help us identify what block and lot we're dealing with here.
Need a
Will this be
microphone.
directly behind?
Mr. Elko,
Wooded
microphone.
area directly behind.
Take a microphone. You take one from the table. It comes off. Oh, there's one there too. Okay. Is it on? No. Yep.
Now it's on.
Now it's on.
All right. So let me look at our plan, GI 101, the location plan. The wooded area that is being referenced is about almost 200 feet from the rear of the building to the rear of the lot line, roughly speaking. That's the wooded area that's to the south of the JCC. So the existing building wall on our site plan, I'm looking at CS 101, we're proposing to encroach about 30 feet into that wooded area. So there's still over 170
70
feet
feet.
or so of wooded area to remain. It's very minimal.
Okay.
Second concern I have is regard to drainage. I want to hold on to that microphone. Right now, there's what we affectionately call a creek that runs along that wooded area behind the properties on Fishel Road, and it curves into the storm drain that crosses Fishel Road about 3 houses down from us. That storm drain gets inundated heavily during severe rainstorms now. Is the drainage for the improvements going to drain towards Oak Tree Road and away from the back of the properties, or was that considered at all?
The collection system for the storm drainage will drain towards Oak Tree Road, and it'll be handled in an underground system that's under the parking lot.
All right, great. Then my third concern is with regard to light pollution. Good woods make good neighbors, and presently, during these 3 months of the year, the spring, summer, and winter, there's minimal light pollution between the properties on my property and my next two neighbors, and the facility, the YMCA JCC facility. And but in the wintertime, the foliage drops, and there's a lot more light that comes across. Most of it's security lighting, and it's minimal. I don't know what you had mentioned earlier about the lighting for the parking lots, and that might affect our neighbors on Farm Haven. Compass points notwithstanding, I can't tell one way or the other. But with the additional lighting that's being added for the parking lots and the temple that's being added, how much is that going to increase the illumination?
So it shouldn't, the proposed lighting is going to be within the township ordinance requirements. There's certain illumination levels that are not permitted beyond the property line. We meet all of those. I think the exact number, I'm going to forget, it's either half a foot candle or a quarter of a foot candle. It's very, very low lighting level. That's along the front. All the lighting we're proposing for this building is in the front along the road.
Okay.
To my knowledge, the only building lights are going to remain to be those security lights along the back facing the southern property.
Okay, my last point was, and it's not meant as a gotcha in any way, a lot of discussion has been said about the hours of the JCC on Fridays, which closes at 4 p.m., but the YMCA is open till 9 p.m. on Fridays. And I know from the experience of my kids who are all now grown, the YMCA had been a bit of a congregation point on Friday nights for exercise and such. And I don't know if this affects the parking concerns that the committee has, the board has had. And I'll leave it with that, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for being very precise. Anyone else within 200 feet? Yep, come on up.
Hello, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do,
Please state your full name for the record and provide your address.
and I'll spell it. Bernadette Olejko Gadaleta, Olejkogadaleta, 5 Fishel Road. We're right behind the property. And I just wanted to give you a little background. We would not have come here if I had had time to get here, because when we got the notice, I thought this was pretty settled already. So just so you understand, we didn't realize what was going on. And we saw the article in the paper about all these variances, and I really didn't have time to find out. So we came here. I have to say, the board, thank you. You had excellent questions that gave me more information than I really knew I wanted to have, and they were great presentations. My family's been at that property before there was anything on that property except the Schuster's selling tires. I remember going there with a little tire swing. When the JCC wanted to come, my father came to the meeting. They said that wooded buffer would always stay, and that was my biggest concern, because in the wintertime, even though it's a big buffer, it really gets limited because all the leaves are gone, and there's a lot of light and whatever. But the JCC has been very good neighbors. If the lights are left on and for some reason we complain, like, hey, shut them off, they shut them off because it's a security concern for them. Then when the YMCA wanted to come in, we're in support of that. We're in support of the use of this property with the variance. I've been in this property longer than the Temple Emmanuel's been in existence. I'm a little old, but let me just reference my phone to make sure there's no other point. The garbage that you mentioned, we raised our kids. I've lived there continuously. We've both lived there for over 35 years. We've never had any issues with garbage. So I just want to say that. And the parking space, all the discussion about that helped alleviate concerns about, that variance. So I just want to thank you for your time. And since I've been here 2 hours, I wanted to make sure I said something, but I am in support of this and in agreement, and thank you for the answers that my husband raised because he had some valid concerns.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else within 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Anyone else? What? Are you inside 200 feet? Did you get a certified letter? Okay, so I'm going to go outside now. Anyone outside of 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard, come on up.
Okay, do you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
And please state your full name for the record, providing your address, and I will swear the next person in after you're done.
Okay. I'm Ariba Shazad. We are Rutgers students, and we were.
We need your address.
Sorry, I'm 33 Arthur Ave, Carteret, New Jersey.
Okay, and what would you like to tell us?
AREEBASHAHZAD. We are Rutgers students. We were sent here on an assignment for public administration, and we had to ask a question to complete the assignment.
Okay, let's hear the question.
We just wanted to know what the next steps were after you guys get approved for your proposals.
Okay. Well, the first thing that we have to do, the attorney, Ms. Shaw, has to do a resolution, and she has how long to do that?
I have, from the date this is complete, about 45 days to complete a resolution.
And then once we approve, then the resolution gets on the agenda for approval, and then?
Once the resolution has been adopted by the board, then the applicant would publish it and wait an additional amount of time for anyone who wants to appeal the decision.
And I think that's what, 30 days or 60 days?
No, that's
20 days?
No, not 20 days.
45.
45.
That's 45.
None of us in the room. So,
If they want to appeal it, once it's published.
Oh, yes.
yeah. And then after the 45 days, then they come and they get all the revised plans in, and then they go to the construction department, and from there, we don't know because the construction department takes care of the rest. Okay?
Yes,
Was this entertaining? Did you enjoy this? Any other question? Okay, go ahead. We have to
Hi.
swear you in.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And state your full name for the record, providing your address.
Alishma Huck, ALISHMAHAQ, 1124 Joyce Kilmer Avenue, New Brunswick.
Okay, what would you like to
My
ask?
question was, the statute talks about something called public good, and isn't it important that these kind of land uses are promoted?
Yes. Well, would the zoning officer like to touch that one? Since you've been so quiet this evening, I'll give you a chance to talk.
Okay, so she's asking for my personal opinion as a zoning officer of Edison. Yes, I agree with you. I think it is a good idea that these proposals become more in step with our master plan for the progress and the growth of Edison. I think it's a good idea, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so will you now get better grades because you asked your questions? Okay, that's the way to go. Anything else? You done? Okay, fine. Okay, anyone else outside of 200 feet of the property wanting to be heard? Okay, with that, I'll close the case. I'll call for a motion to close the public portion.
Motion to close public portion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Before I go to Mr. Shire, does the board want any kind of discussion, or can I go to Mr. Shire to find out what he would like to do next? Are we okay? We're okay? Okay. Okay, Mr. Shire, it's your decision now. As we said at the beginning, we have 6, so.
I'm okay going with 6. We're happy taking a vote with the 6.
Okay, do you want to do any summation, or are you just happy to go on?
I think that the testimony has been quite long and detailed, and there were a lot of questions. They were all answered, and I believe the applicants presented an application that should be granted because of the benefits to the Township of Edison and the people of the surrounding area.
Okay, great. With that, I'll go to the board for a motion, please.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Conboy.
Madam Chair, I will make a motion to approve. I believe that this application is an inherently beneficial use. This project will bring together 2 long-established organizations in the community, and it would also be a overall benefit to the community in that it would bring the current benefits that were happening on 2 separate sites into one site. I believe that the applicant has met all the negative and positive criteria. The project is particularly well suited for the use intended. It is not a detriment to the public good. The applicant would agree to the following conditions. They would agree to the conditions set forth in the Delaware Route and Engineering and Bignell Planning Report. As per the Bignell Planning Report, 1 tree will be added to the plan. There will be signage included for the delivery area as well as the trash and refuge pickup area. The trash and refuge pickup schedule will remain as currently scheduled. Any excavation within 75 feet of the pipeline buffer, the applicant would contact the pipeline company to coordinate. Any rooftop mechanicals, hot boxes, or any and all ground-mounted utilities will be properly screened. The applicant agrees to abandon the 2020 approval on the site, and the applicant will agree to submit revised plans and an amended application. With regard to any of the items not mentioned above, the motion will incorporate the testimony of the applicant, attorney, planners, engineers, members of the board, as well as the incorporation of all the conditions of what is to be done at the site as was testified to.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Cassandra.
Mr. Skibar,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. O'Gorman,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Barone,
Yes on the motion.
Mr. Patel,
Yes on the motion.
Vice Chair Kamba,
Yes on the motion.
and Chairwoman Federick.
Yes on the motion. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mr.
Thank you very
Shire,
much.
Mr. Glenn, everyone.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for being precise, to the point. We have no resolutions, correct, Cassandra?
We have one, I believe.
Okay.
Yes, we have one. Case number Z22, 2022. Gourier is granted. Yeah, that's it.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. We are now going to go into closed session, and then we'll come back and
Make a
adjourn.
motion to go into closed session.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then I'll come back and go to adjournment. Right, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back on record, and
Make a motion to reconvene?
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next motion, please.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, good evening, everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next week.